Just to begin with, fun to learn, how did that come about? Worshipper, but he also was a contract killer.
Math is really nice.
Oh God, you're weird. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to IUX's Exploring with IUX, and it's Hamara podcast, and Aaj Hamara Mehman is Dania Hassan. Assalamu alaikum, Dania.
Walaikum salam, George. How are you?
Very well, and Dania is the founder and head of operations for Fun to Learn, and that's a program that engages students in civic-sense interactive activities along with character building exercise. And today we're going to be talking about character. What is character? How do you build it? And how do you develop it in our young people? Just to begin with, fun to learn, how did that come about?
So basically, I went to an exchange program when I was 16, and after coming back from the exchange, we had to do civil activities, in different areas, wherever we wish to. It could be in a hospital, education sector, wherever, right? So I chose the educational sector, and specifically I chose a government school, a primary government school, to conduct an activity over health and hygiene awareness. And I showed them, my volunteers and we showed them presentations for health and hygiene related topics such as washing hands, brushing teeth, taking a shower, etc. And it was the first time that the students had seen a projector, and after that we took them outside for some experiential learning, and we taught them how to wash their hands, how to brush their teeth, all these basic things. And later on we thought that would be the end of it, right? That specific activity was called Fun to Learn, and there was absolutely no intention to make it a volunteer group which would work for more than 6 years. But after that...
So it's been working for 6 years?
Yeah, it has been working for 6 years.
And you've done about 30 plus projects,
yeah,
and you've impacted the lives of about 4,500 students.
I think the number is more now.
Wow. And doing all of this sort of experiential learning with, and are you targeting primarily primary school children, or?
No. So initially it was just for primary school government schools, yeah, children, but later on we also did activities in the secondary schools. We also did activities in the private sector. We did activities in orphanages. So then it just kept on expanding. We didn't really put a cap size on our audience.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
Wow. So you've done this for 6 years and you're 22, and so that's a remarkable. And you were a member of the National Youth Council, weren't you?
Yeah.
God, these are fine leaders that we have in our country today.
I am flattered, George, and I don't think that my teachers have the same to say about me.
But tell me, what was the motivation to continue? From you, personally?
I think it's just that every time I do an activity, every time my volunteers help me out with an activity, it's not a one-sided benefit that we are providing to other students, or it's not that we are showing them, a world which is new to them. We are also seeing a new world. We are also getting if the students are getting experiential learning, then we are also getting the same back. And
so what you're saying, it sort of helped you get out of your slightly privileged bubble and actually experience the other side of the divide, the social divide.
And I honestly think that even if someone is not running a volunteer group, every individual or at least every individual who has been privileged enough to go to a college or a university should at least start taking part in such activities. They really get to see the world out there and how people just a few kilometers away from us are actually living. So I think that every person should. This is one of my personal drives, and if you ask about my motivation, other than that, it's just that the children, they welcome you in a very sweet way. They when you go there, they make you feel like you're at home. and even if it's their school, it feels like it's your school. If it's an orphanage, it feels like your home. They really make you feel welcome. It's a very warm experience, and I think everyone should have that sort of experience in their lives.
Yeah, because we do live in these sort of ghettos and silos in Pakistan, where you obviously see the other side, but you don't really experience it.
Exactly.
I just wanted to talk to you because you mentioned the fact that you do character building exercises with the students, and I just wanted to talk to you. What is character in your opinion, and where do you see a deficit in character traits or character development in Pakistan?
So I personally think that character is something which should start, character building should start as early as possible. Like in terms of discipline, in terms of personal awareness, in terms of awareness of the world around you, of the things that are not morally correct, let's say. So you can't really instill character in someone who is like, you can't do it overnight in someone who is, let's say, 18 years old or 20 years old. You need to do a lot of mehnat on them to actually make them go through the experience. But if a student or a kid is, let's say, 4 or 5 years old, and if you start teaching them from that point, they learn really quickly. And if you tell and
so is it sort of discipline primarily? It's being able to not react impulsively. It's to be what makes a strong character? What makes a good character?
All right, so I think there is no specific definition behind it. I can't be like, George, these are the traits of a good character and these are the traits of a bad character. That's not how at least from my experience, that's not how we can draw the line.
But I think we can talk about certain things like self-discipline, integrity,
honesty, awareness of yourself and people around you or the situations around you, about how to react in specific situations, about lots of things.
Keeping your word, hard
being
work.
Mindful of other people's, let's say, other people's existence, per se.
So do you think we pamper our children here in Pakistan, or do we let them get away with things that they're not, that they don't inherently have these characteristics enough?
I think there are all sorts of situations. I've seen people who are very tough to their children in terms of being disciplined, and then the children, they're disciplined at home, but when they grow up, when they enter their teens, yes, so they become rebellious, they become repulsive, and but also at the same time there are children who were never really doing good in terms of character development in their childhood. Let's say they were not disciplined enough, or they were not being mindful of other people's existence, but later on they turned out to be fine. So I think primarily I think it should be done at school. In the early years, starting from the early years, and then later on up till the university level. Like I study in university, and they're still making us take these personal effectiveness classes. Where
what do they teach you there?
And
you're at IBA, yeah?
Yeah, I study in IBA. I'm a 6th semester student, and these personal effectiveness classes are mandatory for us. And in these, this was basically an entire character workshop, which was around 14 hours long, spread over the semester, and they taught us from basic things like how to sit in an interview, or how to be mindful of other people's time, and how to step up and step down.
It's interesting you mentioned mindful time, because that's one of my big bugbears here in Pakistan, is that you know, people tend to not to be as disciplined as other places.
Yep.
On time. You know, you'll say, I'll turn up at 1 o'clock, and they turn up at 1:45. Whatever. And there is a tendency to think, yeah, koi bad nahi, you know, inshallah I'll turn up. Yeah, I'm just 5 minutes away.
Yeah.
You know. It is considered, certainly in the West, extremely disrespectful to turn up more than 5 minutes late.
Yep.
People will give 5 minutes for traffic, whatever, but you tend to turn up before time or on time. And what you're communicating, what people don't fail to realize is what you're communicating about yourself is that I'm not professional, I'm not self-disciplined myself, I don't take accountability of my own actions and responsibilities. And it's the same with like verbal communications or verbal, you know, if someone promises you something, I will do something by this time. If you don't do that in the West, people will write you off. You're unprofessional, you're not serious, you're lazy, you know, all of that. Whereas here, it's just, yeah, I won't do it. I've said I'm going to deliver that report by Friday. It doesn't matter. And that communicates so much. And you see, the reason I'm talking about the West is that we're now having to compete in a global economy.
Yep.
And so character and skills and these soft skills are vital in order for our students to compete, because they are going to be, you have one chance. You know, first impressions matter.
Yep.
And if you blow it,
I was actually about to come to this point that, you know, you were just talking about turning up on time. Let's say there's traffic outside, but there are other things which are also related to respecting other people's time, such as, you know, if you made a commitment in terms of anything. Let's say even if you're not doing something professionally, if you're meeting a friend, and you told them that I would be there by 1:30, and then you either forget to show up or you got really late and you said, all right, once the person has reached there, like let's say I've told you to meet at so and so coffee shop and you've reached there, and then I tell you that, oh okay, I'm gonna be 45 minutes late or an hour late, you would have...
It's incumbent upon you to communicate that.
And it's just that even if you're getting late, you know, things, there are hiccups which come in life, you're supposed to inform earlier or as early as you can.
You know. And it's just basic. So for example, a colleague of mine was ill the other day. She informed me well in advance, I can't come in, I'm ill.
Yep.
That's the professional way of doing it. There have been in the past colleagues who just don't turn up, and you're like calling them saying, where are you? And it's just like, no, that's not the way to behave. Funnily, we had a podcast lined up last week. The person didn't show up, and she said, she called saying, I'm running late, and then half an hour she didn't turn up, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. And we had the entire, obviously, crew ready, waiting, recording, all their time going to waste, because time is money.
Yep.
You know, they cost money, all the camera team and everything. And that, the person that we was a guest, didn't bother to inform. And we couldn't reach her, we were calling her, WhatsApping her, trying to reach out. It transpired that she was taking her mother to hospital. Mother wasn't critical. But, you know, for example, my wife, when she found out that her mother was sick, she immediately informed her work and just said, look, this is the situation. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. That is the way. However, unless you're in a literally life and death situation, you still need to inform, because people are working around you. You can't just disappear. You can't just ghost. And I think that's a trait that needs to be worked at.
I honestly, it is one of my personal pet peeves, not even just talking about the entire character development spectrum that we're here to talk about today. I personally do not like it when people ditch commitments, when people delay commitments, because for a person like me, I study, I work, I do freelancing, and I also do this fun to learn thing, the entire spectrum.
So time for you is important.
Exactly. So I have things lined up back to back throughout the day, and and sometimes it's also that I have lined up like sort of like a leisure time for me, that also I need to schedule, right?
Yeah.
And it's just that if I'm being delayed throughout the day, and if I've taken off half an hour or an hour for my own self, I would not get that at the end of the day, right? So all these things, I think in the entire spectrum of character development, I think commitment is the primary one. If I have to pick one of them and place them on top, it's not just about time, it's about commitment, it's about what you committed to. And
your word is your bond.
Exactly.
So if I say I'm doing something, I do it unless I can't, because obviously there can be
an emergency,
unforeseen
situations,
but then you inform accordingly. I think the thing is that we're not very honest sometimes with ourselves. Can you look yourself in the mirror and say, I did my best, or I did the right thing today? And I think that sometimes is something that
in this, just to take this a bit forward, when you talk about honesty, you just shouldn't, there shouldn't be a third person or a second person to tell you about what you did wrong or where you're going wrong. You should honestly be your own character police over here, or over in any situation. That how you mentioned earlier कि कोई बात नहीं, कुछ नहीं होता, हो जाएगा. That attitude should not come. You should be able to criticize your own self if you've stepped out of the line.
Yeah,
that's important.
For example, I mean, and let's get sometimes it's very difficult in Pakistan to remain in a honest character or strong character. So, for example, sometimes at the traffic lights, when there are cars around, you're just tempted to just break the signal because you see it done so many times. And I've broken the signal, don't get me wrong, I'm not a saint. But afterwards I remind myself, well, what am I teaching? What would I be teaching? I never do it with my children, by the way, but I do it when I'm on my own. And it's usually late at night because I'm a bit sort of scared for, robberies and stuff. But it is worth thinking, but I see it on the school run every morning, parents breaking the signal, or perhaps drivers, I don't know. And I never do it with my children because what I'm wanting to try and communicate to them is that no matter how inconvenient, doing the right thing is hard sometimes. But it's better to do the right thing than to do the easy thing.
Yep.
Because actually, you can look yourself in the eye at the end of the day and say, I did the right thing. And so if that's just waiting at the lights for the lights to change, and rather than trying to break the lights and trying to get to school 30 seconds earlier, I'd rather get to the school with my children alive and intact than break the signal and God forbid that there's a head-on collision.
So in this situation, the one that you stated, or such situations where you're supposed to, where there's a really fine line between integrity or being honest to your own self, the repercussions in the short run are, let's say, better when you're dishonest, but in the long run they're not good at all. But when you have this thing developed inside you that let's say you did not break a signal today, tomorrow your kids are not going to break one, right? I could give you a tip over that. When I drive and I do not want to break a signal, what I do is I'm going straight and then I take a left take a U-turn, and then where you can take a left turn without actually. So that is a tip that you can follow if your kids are in the car and you're tempted to break a signal. But it's honestly like if you're stuck in the middle of the cars, and even if someone is honking behind you like crazy, because that's what happens, right?
But discipline is hard, and self-discipline is hard.
It's peer pressure which comes. I'm sorry to cut you off. It's in this specific example where we're talking about a signal, the car behind you would be honking like crazy.
It could be a signal, it could be copying your mate's work at school, or you're just doing a jugaad, or whatever the issue is.
Yep.
But what I find it difficult to comprehend is that at the same time we're talking here in Ramzan, and people can be extremely disciplined if they want to be. They are going without water and food from sunset to sunrise, or sunrise to sunset, I should say. That takes enormous amount of discipline. And yet, that discipline doesn't carry across into other aspects of their lives. And I find it's almost like, okay, well, we've been disciplined here, we can just let loose and be irresponsible in other aspects of life. Why is that?
I honestly think that once again it's about personal awareness on a mass level that is really missing. Like, people don't really know, people have really less civic sense on a mass level. It has been there for generations that koi baat nahi. In the earlier times, there was no such hand wavy behavior. People used to really be disciplined. That's what I've been told by older people, and their lives were definitely more self-aware. There's another thing I want to mention over here. Honesty is not appreciated in a lot of situations in Pakistan. Rather, it is punished. When you were talking about copying your mate's homework right now, a couple of sentences back, my own self started reflecting in front of my eyes about, if this happens sometimes, we're having a lot of back-to-back assignments in university. If I fall sick, let's suppose, or if I am struggling in a specific topic, because I'm an econ math major, economics and maths, so things tend to get tough, and at times you just want to be honest to the teacher or the teaching assistant that, okay, I cannot submit my assignment today because I was, let's say, sick, or I will not be able to do it unless I revise this chapter again. But if you don't submit it on time, then they're gonna end up penalizing you. They're going to deduct marks for late submission, and even though you told them way in advance, as soon as you found out, it does contradict a bit with the time thing, which we talked about.
So what you're saying essentially is that the systems we have in this country, we punish honesty, or we reprimand and we reward people who do the jugaad.
Yes. Exactly.
I can understand that, because I talk a little bit. I pay my taxes, and when I returned to Pakistan in 2016, and it was a traumatic time because of personal reasons. My mother-in-law had died very suddenly, and my father-in-law was sick with ALS. Anyway, and we had then relocated from the UK back to Pakistan. And just so happened, I submitted my tax returns 2 months late and now I have a case against me, which is a tax liability bill for almost 2 lakhs. But that's not because I didn't pay my tax. I paid the tax. It was just submitted 2 months. The return was submitted 2 months late. But the fine is not. It's not like a 10,000 rupee fine or a 20,000. It's a 2 lakh fine, which I think is outrageous considering the amount. And so it sort of makes you think, if you play the system, if you're honest, if you're trying to do the right thing, you get penalized and hit hard. Whereas if I just not A, paid tax in the first place, or B, did some lafaf, and I don't know, perhaps if I just paid 50,000 to some guy, he might drop this case.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they're just shaking me down because I'm an easy soft target, because they're having to reach a certain quota for their year, and they want to try and hit the law-abiding tax-paying public. And so you just feel, this is not fair, this is not right, this just doesn't work. And I just wonder, perhaps the way our society is developed, we don't encourage people to be honest.
There's another thing in this discussion which came into my mind. If you follow any religion, I'm not saying just follow a specific religion or any religion at all, and I'm like, there are people out there who don't follow any religion, that's also fine, as long as they have other ways to build their character or keep their character intact. But those people, and there is a huge majority of people who actually believe in religion throughout the world, in any religion. It could be,
and they all say the same thing.
Yeah, and it's
all the religions say the same thing.
Exactly. That's what I was coming to. That if you're following any religion at all, and if you actually abide by the laws of that religion, you're good to go in terms of character, because none of the religions in the world teach you dishonesty. None of the religions in the world, tell you not to keep your integrity intact. None of the religions tell you to disrespect others. None of the religions are telling you to, go around making a mess out of other people's lives or to bribe people. Let's say the teachings are uniform. The ways are different, but the teachings are uniform.
Absolutely.
And if people seriously follow their own religion, no matter what religion they belong to, just talking about the majority who believe in God or religion. So I think every person from this majority would be good to go in terms of character. But we have very specific boundaries set for us, that if you're a sinner if you don't go for Friday prayer or Sunday school, or if you don't go to a Hindu temple on special days. You have this boundary set, but you do not really see the whole code of conduct which is going on behind it. I will give you an example of prayers. There's azan 5 times a day. The point is to reach on time. If you do not reach on time, you miss your jamaat, you miss your prayer, right? So that is just a way of instilling discipline in people, or instilling mindfulness of other people's time. If you don't reach on time, everyone's just gonna do their prayer and they're gonna go out of the mosque, and you're gonna be left behind alone.
Yeah.
So similarly in other religions, if let's say in Christianity, if you don't show up on Sunday school, like you said, that if you show up 2 hours late, your school is going to be over, the mass will be over, people are going to walk out of the church after they're done with their prayer, right? So if you really look at it in the spectrum of following religion, and which the majority does, then I think every person in the world would be disciplined, would be mindful of other people's time, would be caring, would share their resources, stuff like that.
It reminds me of there was a very famous artist in Lahore called Iqbal Hussain, and he owns Coco's Den, which is a restaurant in Lahore that overlooks the Badshahi Mosque, and he had a painting there, and it was a painting of this gentleman on his prayer mat, and he was about to do sajda, and beside him, just away from him, was a sort of Kalashnikov, and it was a painting that Iqbal Hussain had done, and he told the story about the person that this was a very devout, 5 times a day worshipper, but he also was a contract killer. So you could see that disconnect between his sort of day-to-day job and his. It's interesting, and so what? Okay, so we've talked about some of the work. So let's think practically now. Let's give some practical solutions. What can people be doing who are watching this, who are perhaps young adults like yourself? Perhaps students looking to start entering the workplace, what tools can they adopt or have in order to be the best version of themselves?
So I'm an economics and mathematics major. I've already stated in this conversation, and
stop showing off.
And that's what
mathematics. God.
Math is really nice.
Oh God, weird. No one likes math.
We don't really do numbers in math. We do a lot of other things. I'm going to tell you later on. So in economics, in every economics course that we start at university, I've done tons of them by now. They start with a specific line: resources are scarce. Resources are scarce. Resources are scarce. That's what they tell us in every single course.
Resources are scarce?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It means that your resources are limited. You do not have a renewable amount of resources. There aren't unlimited. Scarce.
Sorry, I thought you said scars, like scars,
no,
like.
I'm sorry if I mispronounced it.
Scarce, yes.
Yes. So that's that they're not unlimited. So such a resource in our lives is time.
Right.
Time is
scarce.
The most important and scarce. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly now.
Yes, correctly.
So that resource, all right. So if and I think that's how even I used to be a bit of, I used to have a bit of a hand wavy attitude earlier in, let's say, during my early teens. But the day I realized how important time is, and time in general, not just your own time, but other people's time, people you know, people you don't know. If it's like a taxi that you have, online taxi that you've ordered on your phone and the guy is waiting outside, don't make him wait. Just go down and stand 2 minutes in advance. It wouldn't hurt you, right? So the day you realize, and it's not that you have to do it every single time. It's not that you would show up at the gate every single time 2 minutes or 1 minute before the taxi comes in, right? But it's the guilt that you start feeling, that as the moment you get the notification that your captain has arrived, you start feeling that guilt from within, right?
Yeah.
So that guilt, if you are feeling that guilt, that means that you're on the right track. It means that you are actually feeling that, oh, okay, right now I'm being disrespectful of someone else's time. So
do you think people feel guilt?
At least I do. And I know other people who do. I'm sure that you do. The kind of conversation that I've had up till now with you, I think that if let's say I made this commitment with you and you didn't show up for another hour, I am sure that you would feel guilty, wouldn't you?
I would.
So there are a lot of people who feel guilty about it, and but there are people who don't, and that's what we need to achieve.
How do they learn?
Practice. Practice, and if you're getting, let's say, half an hour late today, try to be 15 minutes late tomorrow, and even lesser late tomorrow, and even lesser late day after tomorrow. And that way there would be a day in just a couple of days, let's say in a week, in 2 weeks, you're going to be on time, and then you just have to try to be earlier. But if you can't be earlier, then you just have to keep that specific thing intact. You don't let that go in a reverse order, let's say that अच्छा चलो ठीक है, now I've been here, बस सही, कल से हम time पे आ जाएंगे.
So what are the things that are, okay, let's have some fun now.
Okay.
What are the things that are like dead giveaways that people are being lax, being, is it the, the koi badne, are yaar,
and things like यार क्या होता है एक बार हो तो गया yeah, something like और भी तो लोग कर रहे हैं. This is the best one. I think the one which tops the list. If everyone else is doing it, then
why should
why should we?
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
If everyone, and this is, if everyone's throwing litter, everyone else, it's your country, it's your, do you throw litter in your home? No, you
exactly.
gotta go and put it in the bin. Why are you throwing it out your car? Why are you throwing it in your, it drives me mad, because this country is, or certainly this city is filthy.
Yep.
And we need to,
so,
sorry, that's random.
No, I mean, that's like, that's something which is to be discussed on, and if we're talking about this on a podcast, then it's good that it's going to reach to thousands of people out there. And if there is, let's say, 10 wrappers of trash on the road, next to the road, and it's not your responsibility to go and add the 11th one, because exactly. you're just gonna be like, oh, okay, I'm just adding one to it. And there's another economics concept that I would bring in. It's the concept of marginal. Marginal means plus one or additional one, right? So it's just marginal litter that you are adding, right? So if you add the 11th one today, and right after you there's going to be another person, and they would be like, I'm just adding one piece of litter, and then another person would come, and this way that litter would keep on increasing and increasing and increasing. There's no stop to it.
I will add another economics theory to you. Compounding.
Yeah.
So this will compound, and so the 11th wrapper will become 10th wrapper, the 12th, but then over time that's 24, that's 36,
yes.
Also and so on, it'll be compounded, so yeah. Any other advice you would want to give people, perhaps in terms of character development?
I think personal awareness is one thing that, personal awareness...
What do you mean by that, personal awareness?
Like, let's give you an example. Consciousness could be a word, or let's say if let's bring an example. We're having iftar, all right? You and me, we're having iftar. There's one last samosa left. There was an odd number of samosas. Yeah, you can't do that. If you really want to have the samosa, maybe the other person also wants to have it. Maybe just divide it into two, and both of you can share it. So these are the little things, even though they just seem very little and they just seem very negligible. Ek samosa ki to baat hai.
Would you care for the last samosa?
I'm a big fan of chicken samosas, and I could eat like 100 of them. But if there is another person with me, this is an example from this week only. I was at an iftar, there was a last samosa left, and I didn't eat that last one because just in case the other person wants it. And the samosas were delicious. They were absolutely delicious.
And that's really important, because you were sharing, as you say, self-awareness, but you were showing empathy and politeness.
So when you're in a situation when you're in a social situation, especially when you're inside in an isolated environment inside your house, you can do whatever you want. I do whatever I want, I'm going crazy. But if you are in a sort of like a societal situation, when you're interacting with another person, when there are external variables involved, then you are supposed to keep an eye on everything, all the factors that could affect the situation, all the factors that could affect you or the other person, and you should keep the other person ahead of you, unless they're, unless they're serial killers like the one that you mentioned. But other than that, if you really learn to be mindful and to keep others ahead of you, and to stay self-disciplined, starting the first thing, starting with time, respecting your own time, making schedules, not just waiting for the last moment. Even if you cannot follow the schedules, making one in the first place is another step, you know, just like I mentioned, that feeling the guilt while the taxi driver is waiting outside is the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, did you learn anything from your 30 plus projects that you've done with various students? What did you learn from that in terms of character and development and discipline?
See, students, we like from the overall perspective that we see, students from the private schools or students from the more privileged backgrounds, even though they seem to be more disciplined, even though, you know, they are taught all of these things from an early age, they seem to know how to go through this experiential learning of different topics that we teach in government schools. But I've also done activities in private schools or in private high schools, colleges, universities through Fun to Learn only. And I have noticed that there's a flip side to it. This empathy thing, it comes from the lesser privileged area. Like if there is one cold drink, then kids would somehow bring a glass, they would divide that cold drink with you, they would not have it themselves. Or if there's a sandwich that they got, they would take it home and, you know, they would share it with their siblings or their cousins or anyone. So this empathy thing, it really comes, there's a great deal of empathy in the lesser privileged socioeconomic backgrounds that I've noticed through these activities. And the kind of warm welcome that they give to their guests, like if I take you to a privileged school, high school right now, they would come up to you, maybe say hi, I've watched you on Instagram, Facebook, they might want to take a selfie with you just to have a little conversation. But if you go to, let's say, a government school or the kind of schools that we go to, or an orphanage, the entire area would know that George is in the vicinity right now, even though they would not know who George is, even though they would not be watching George's podcasts or any sort of, you know, videos that he makes and posts, but they would welcome you so warmly. They would get people to serve a lot of snacks for you. They would bring things from all over the place. So even though they have little, but they want to share all that they have.
I've experienced that.
Yeah.
That often those that have the least give
the most. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for a very interesting discussion on character, and continue with the great work that Fun to Learn is doing. And I am blown away by the fact that you're only 22 and that you've done so much already. And, you know, we need people like you in Hamara Mulk, and carry on with the great work.
Thank you so much for having me, George. It was an absolute pleasure for me, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yes, with samosas.
With samosas, chicken samosas, but I'm going to have the last one.
I like the cheese samosas.
All right, noted.
Okay, so that's it. Until next time, join us for more Exploring with Our UX.